The Everything Sequel podcast is brought to you by the Vegas Beer Guys and the Last of the Giant Fire Lizards. The Everything Sequel podcast contains explicit language. 'Cause we learned it from you, Dad. We talk The Force Awakens. My name is Michael Shantz of the How Dare You Awards. Joining me, the man trying to crawl inside my mind, Tom Stewart of Lonesome Whistle Productions. Say hi, Tom.
Droid, please.
I feel
Where
like
do you stand on contemporary slang in Star Wars movies? I feel like this is an issue that this trilogy has created.
Yeah,
that I've never had to think about before, and now I have to make a choice about whether I like it or not.
Exactly.
So,
yeah, they make.
Where do you stand on the issue?
Well, I don't think I care for it.
No, I don't care for it either. It reminded me how pleasingly free the original trilogy was of like late 1970s slang.
Right.
Like, no one's calling each other man.
Right.
When Lando appears, he's not talking in jive.
He's not saying, hey, bro.
Exactly,
Good to see you.
Yeah. But, yeah, they sort of feel the need to... I mean, there are instances in the prequels where they're leaning into the sort of linguistic tropes of the time, like the pod race with the commentators.
Mm-hmm.
But... the dialogue in that movie feels actually more like it came from the 1930s than the early 2000s.
That's true.
But they do seem to want to firmly root the language of...
In service, again, of trying to please 5-year-olds.
Yeah.
Like, there's no bigger 3 to 5-year-old moment than those announcers in that movie.
Completely, yeah. But here they seem to want to update it for the TikTok generation linguistically.
I think you mentioned in our ranking episode that all 3 of these movies, their attempts at comedy, are not funny, and these stylistic language choices are a big part of that.
Yeah. And when we get to Rise of Skywalker, there's a line that I refuse to believe hasn't, like, that I've been told the line is different. It's go back to the gaslighting issue. I've been told the line is something other than I hear, and I guarantee what I hear is what they actually
is what
said.
the line is.
And what everyone is telling me about what this line is supposed to be is just pure gaslighting because they know they went too far with contemporary slang.
All right.
So we'll get there.
I look forward to that. If it were me remembering that, by the time we got to it, I'd forget it.
Yeah, this is a Shantz bug credits.
Tom Stewart's gonna make a promise and hopefully keep it.
Oh, I will definitely talk about it because it's the first thing I think of when I think of the Rise of Skywalker at this moment.
Okay.
Because it encapsulates everything about the gaslighting of it. Don't tell me I didn't hear what I hear.
All right, fine. So here we are. We're here to talk Star Wars, The Force Awakens.
Yeah. Well, Episode 7.
Episode 7.
In the middle of... Yeah, that's not the full title you just gave there.
No, well...
to be honest, I like the title you suggested in your opening, Another Star Wars. I think we should have reverted to that sequel naming convention. This trilogy really is another Star Wars.
That's funny. All right, wait. I'm looking it up.
What are you looking up?
It does say Star Wars Episode 7. Annoying.
Oh, that hill you died on in the last episode where you're saying they don't... Yeah. It does. It says that on IMDb.
It does.
Well, but
God,
interestingly, and I guess to throw you a bone, you're not entirely wrong because they go Episode 7 dash The Force Awakens, so they don't.
That's
double,
right.
They don't double colon it. because presumably at some point they were like, what are we going to do, double colon it? And they said, no, put a dash.
No, that would be ridiculous.
But that dash is, that grammar changes everything, because that's, Star Wars Episode 7, The Force Awakens. That's how I hear it when I put that dash in. So the grammar changes everything about the title. That's saying The Force Awakens is just an afterthought, basically.
All right. Let's talk immediately about title, because you hate all my titles.
Okay. No, not all of them.
And what do you think of these 3 titles? Because whenever I look at these 3 titles...
we've had this conversation before, and there are social media videos to this effect, but if you attach the titles to different Star Wars movies, they make more sense.
Right, yeah.
Right, we said that like the prequel trilogy, like the Phantom Menace is sort of a really good title for Revenge of the Sith, and Revenge of the Sith is a really good title for the Phantom Menace. Because literally in the Phantom Menace, the Sith says, "We will have our revenge." And there's all of that going on with these 3 titles, plus, like, they're absurdly inappropriate.
Right, yeah.
So, the rise of Skywalker, nothing to that effect happens in the movie The Rise of Skywalker. The Last Jedi is about...
Until she just chooses to take that name.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's a moment in every film where they reference the title only to debunk it in each of the movies.
Yeah.
I guess The Force Awakens is the closest to a meaningful title.
It's really the
Snoke says,
yeah,
have you sensed an
awakening in the Force?
The awakening.
Yeah.
But as I understand it, the Force. That's not how the Force works. It doesn't. And again, in Last Jedi, Luke sort of says, the Force is not owned. No one owns the Force, right? It's not.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just there. So the idea of it sleeping and waking doesn't make much sense. But it kind of makes sense in the context of the film. But The Last Jedi and Rise of Skywalker are not only meaningless, they're the opposite of what the film is about.
Yeah, there's another Jedi that showed up to see Luke.
Yeah. He says, I will not be the last Jedi.
Yeah. Okay.
And Rey just decides to call herself Skywalker in the last 3 seconds of the movie.
Yeah. You know what? I just saw their ghosts.
There's no rise there. Yeah.
She's like John Cryer in Hiding Out. She's seeing the coffee can of Maxwell House, and
I don't know what any of that means.
Oh, good movie.
Is that a John Badham movie?
It sounds like it should be, but it's not.
No.
It's one of those really inappropriate movies from the 80s where...
That sounds like a John Badham movie.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I think John Cryer was probably 22 or something like that when he made the movie, but he's supposed to be older, like a 30-year-old.
Okay.
Kind of Wall Street guy who somehow needs to hide from the mob. And he ends up hiding from the mob back at a high school where he falls in love with a high school girl.
It's so interesting, just to bring it back to what we're actually talking about.
Right.
Without discounting that great tangent you just took us on. Could you explain the plot of any of these movies that we're about to do in the same 3 sentences that you just explained the plot of that movie?
No, not a chance.
Because I know everything I need to know about that movie now.
Right.
Yeah, interesting.
Actually, that movie stars Annabeth Gish, and I'm wearing my Gish and Gertz shirt.
Gish and Gertz shirt. And I guess you can't do that to be fair, you can't do that with the prequels either, but you could do that with the original Star Wars movies. You could describe the plot in 3 sentences.
Yeah.
For each movie.
Sure.
But the prequels are guilty of the same problem.
Yeah, they're too convoluted.
But you'd think that, given that this trilogy was about going back to basics, you'd think that they would make kind of plot clarity a bigger concern.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's stick with going back to basics because the critics thought so. Like these movies
did I.
these movies were able to fool critics for at least two movies because this movie has 93% on Rotten.
By the way, I can't wait to talk about the first press screening of Rise of Skywalker because it was a shit show, I believe.
Oh, really?
Like unintentional. Oh, well, we'll get there, but there was like unintentional laughter from critics at the press screening.
Oh, well, critics liked
At
that movie.
all the retconning and gaslighting, which just shows how overt it is that even film critics who don't know which end is up when it comes to franchise cinema understood what was going on.
That's funny.
Anyway.
Well, this movie had 93% on Rotten Tomatoes.
93?
93.
I mean, why couldn't it have been 94 just for the Star Wars of it all, but 94.
And directed by your favorite director, J.J. Abrams.
Big fan.
Director of Mission Impossible 3, the Star Trek reboot, Star Trek Into Darkness, Super 8. But, honestly, that's about it, you know? He doesn't have a huge resume under his belt as a big screen director.
Well, he diversified into producing
a lot of television. Yeah.
So you know,
Alias and Lost has taken up a bunch of his life.
Yeah. He casts his stain wider than just the movies he's directed.
True. And then let's do Money Corner. Budget of $245 million. It's crazy to think that that's where this kind of cinema is at now.
Yeah.
Without a blink of an eye. $245 million. Opening weekend, though, of $247.9 million, so it got its money back that weekend. In the USA, $936.6 million, and in the world, $2 billion.
So it was how many years between this and Revenge of the Sith?
Not many.
9?
What
was that,
2009 to 5?
Live math, everyone. we're just stating numbers to each other and hoping that one of them sticks.
It's 99, right?
To an episode of Sesame Street all of a sudden.
99, 2002, 2005, so 10 years later.
Oh, 2005. Okay, so exactly 10 years.
Yeah.
Although I believe Revenge of the Sith was a summer release rather than December.
So that's what I want to talk about, actually, right up top. All these movies are going to be released in December, and for as long as Star Wars movies have been alive, they've always been released in May.
Mm.
Did you have a thought or a feeling about going to see a Star Wars movie in December? Does it matter?
I mean, it's for whatever reason, and I'm sure there's market research to back this up. They probably thought that was the best way to turn it into event cinema.
I think so too, because once you figure it's going to be popular for longer than a month, which most movies aren't. Most movies aren't staying in a movie theater past 4 weeks.
Right.
Even then, and especially now. I mean, sometimes they're on video. Well, sometimes they're on video the same day they're released in theaters, but, they can be on video within 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But I think some of it being released December 18th, you only have a couple of weeks till the end of the year, and then there's nothing. And so there probably was an idea of, we could rule throughout the winter. People go see these movies.
It's like Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
Winter is coming.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's also like it's like they give themselves. Do they buy themselves more time by releasing it in December? Because they get the turnaround of these movies
are quicker.
Ridiculous.
Yeah, it's stupid. It's unbelievable, really.
Every 2 years, but they're not stopping in between. Like, they're making a Star Wars spin-off movie in between. So it's like one a year until 2019. They screwed up the pattern of it by making Solo a summer release, or a spring release, really.
Mm-hmm.
So is there a sense of trying to buy yourself just a little bit more time in a very tight schedule by
Maybe.
making it the end of the year, so you've got a whole nother year?
Yeah.
But it's a whole nother year. But it's a whole nother year.
Yeah.
But it's only one more season. I love that. By the way, I don't know, because they're never going to reboot Star Wars, so I don't know if we're ever going to do Star Wars on Patreon, but that conversation, I think about that conversation between Luke and Uncle Owen on a daily basis, because it's like every political debate you see is just two people arguing the same point from two completely
Different,
angles
yeah.
they'll
never meet. Yeah.
Sort of it's like the Glenn Ross conversation about what counts as a business day. I was like, no, this guy's trying to fucking gaslight you.
Well, no fanfare. No 20th Century Fox.
That's my very first note. The first Star Wars film without fanfare. It feels unofficial and empty. It's just silence and darkness.
Yeah, exactly right.
I was generally like, did I hit pause?
Yeah. But I think what's funny to me is that the film seems to think that just replacing it with Lucasfilm matters. And it does not.
Yeah. But it feels like something's missing, right? It feels like, oh, we should have put something there to get people's juices flowing before you know, they're gonna get their fan service pretty soon, but how are we gonna fill that hole in the movie?
Right.
And their answer is we're just gonna leave it a big hole. And I guess given what, you know, like what they did with the Lucasfilm lock in Indiana Jones, it's like maybe it's better that
maybe the black hole is better.
Yeah, better unfilled, you know? So you because once you fill that hole, there's no going back.
Yes. Instead of a problem best unsolved, it's a problem best unfilled.
Unfilled. There's also something off. Speaking of, like, you know, this kind of cognitive dissonance of not having the fanfare, there's also something off with the opening chords. They sound tinnier to me. It sounds like John Williams not being orchestrated by John Williams, but clearly it is John Williams orchestrating it. But it's like the resonance of the opening chords sounds like it's being played through on mono or something. It's like half of the dimension of that sound is missing somehow.
I think you're on your own.
Maybe I just need to check the speaker on my TV.
It sounds regular to me.
Okay, all right. I may be projecting. I mean, it may be my oral response to the lack of a fanfare. Maybe
it could be
that I hear that. Oh, maybe it's because without the fanfare, those opening chords feel less than.
It could be, yeah.
Because it always led straight on, didn't it?
Yeah.
Da 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 da. Ba. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what it is. Mystery solved.
Perfect.
It's all. I mean,
Inspector
with all the money
Clouseau.
they spent on this movie, couldn't they go like, look, you know, it's not Fox. You know, go to Fox and go. Can we just use the fanfare? Like.
Yeah. Come on, we had a good relationship.
Yeah, you'd think. Yeah. I know George Lucas tried to destroy you and vice versa, but you know.
But come on, we liked each other at one time. All right, what do you think of? I mean, I guess we'll get to each one as we do each movie, but
The Crawl.
The Crawl, yeah.
So
we're not talking taxes, at least. We're not talking trade.
No, is that we start with short sentences, which I think is a rebuttal to the to the prequels. Except by Revenge of the Sith, that the first they have one-word sentences in Sith, so they learned their lesson by then anyway. But they're continuing that trend of keeping the sentences short as a rebuttal to the basically the Crawl of the Phantom Menace.
Yeah,
but. If you look at the content of that sentence, Luke Skywalker has vanished. It's like, oh, okay, so we're not going to see our favorite Star Wars character in
Right.
this movie. And I mean, there was talk of that because he wasn't in the trailer.
Mm-hmm.
Yet there was, he was in the publicity shot of the table read. I don't know what he was doing at the table read. He was bringing everyone else coffee.
Putting his hood up.
He's there reading the script. I'm like, it's like he doesn't need to be there.
What I like about that mental picture is that you eventually see him flipping pages, like looking for his fucking dialogue, and eventually going, "Hey, what the fuck is going on here?"
It's like, should I be looking for something other than Luke? Did you like know Skywalker or Jedi or something? Yeah. So I don't know. It's an immediate downer because if this is about restoring your faith in original trilogy Star Wars, it's a pretty big absence.
Yeah, but you could also say it's a big swing.
But again, a big swing has got to sort of justify itself in terms of what you gain.
Yeah, that it doesn't do that. You're right about that.
It doesn't. Yeah. Well.
But here's one thing I'll say.
Also, it doesn't matter that he's vanished, but we'll get there.
Yeah, right. But, as I was watching The Rise of Skywalker, there's a moment at the end of that movie when the three new leads are all hugging each other.
Mm.
And I got a little choked up. I actually thought to myself, oh my God, I care about these three characters. Not unlike I did the original. And so making these choices early in this film to put your legacy characters in the background for the most part. I mean, Han's the most forward in the, in the entire movie of the original three.
Which is a mistake. No, and this should have been Luke's film, and if they wanted to kill him off at the end of this film, I wouldn't have objected to that. And I also wouldn't object to them killing off Han Solo if they did it in the middle of the next film.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway.
But they had other ideas, clearly.
They certainly did. Well, Harrison Ford had other ideas. Which
that's the big one.
Out of this franchise before it spirals into 3 movies. You could have just put him back in Carbonite. Maybe he got addicted to being in Carbonite, and he was like.
When I was truly happy.
when I was in Carbonite.
Just do it, Chewie.
I got to eat what I wanted. No one was bothering me for things. So
I wasn't hearing shit from 3PO.
And then at the beginning of the second movie, they're, well, now Luke's dead. We better take Han Solo out of his Carbonite vacation.
Yeah, right. Your buddy's back. We thought you might want to see him. I told you I was happy, damn it.
That said, obviously the opening sentences.
They make sense. You could follow it. It might not be the most interesting plot, but
it's more understandable than Phantom Menace, but it's just as badly written because that second sentence is full of unwieldy clauses. It's not like they try to they're trying to express too much in too short a form.
Mm-hmm.
Because no sentence should have that many clauses. So it's just as badly written. It's just that it's more understandable.
Yeah, I agree.
And then First Order, all caps.
Yeah.
Even in the crawl of the movie, they're the surrogates of the Empire. They're described as this is the Empire now.
Yeah.
Well, but why? I mean, unless you want to remake the original Star Wars, really, it's and they never articulate it as these are neo-fascists, which I think would have been obviously we have neo-Nazis in at the high levels of government, maybe more in the immediate future than we would necessarily want in government.
Right.
But the MAGA is different than the Third Reich.
Correct. Yeah.
And the First Order is no different from the Empire in any meaningful way.
And so that's a huge mistake to you. You don't want that familiarity for the audience. You want something new.
Well, I want something that is kind of has some I mean, it gets really problematic towards the end because for whatever reason they decide they just want to go original recipe Empire.
Mm-hmm.
With the final movie.
But I mean, with all three movies, let's face it, that's...
No, I mean, it's the First Order is sort of like, well, these are so they got all the leftovers together and they put it in a blender and this is what's left.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it feels like, whereas I would like the idea of, like, what is a neo-fascist organization in the Star Wars galaxy?
Yeah, but you seem to be upset that they're not...
Like, what does that look like? Like, how are they different from the Empire? By the way, this is just a crawl. I'm going off one line.
I know.
In a crawl. I just wish they...
But there seems to be such a sticking point for you about how...
But the lack of imagination is just... It's like... so we're not even going to try to make the First Order different from the Empire, is what this crawl is telling me.
Yeah, but you're using the analogy of neo-Nazis, and it doesn't matter what group of Nazis it is, they're still all going to have a Nazi flag. So they're all going to kind of look alike and have similar...
And I don't know, I'd like them to be kind of white trashy or something. Like, some nod to... You know, why are they still British guys?
Fewer British accents, I was just going to say.
Yeah, why are they still British guys in... Like, why do they look exactly like the Empire? Why hasn't their style changed?
Well, like I said...
Anyway.
They're still wrapping themselves up in their Nazi flags. That's just who they are.
Yeah, but the followers of Hitler today don't have, like Charlie Chaplin mustaches and the kind of, the side parting. They dress like,
Yeah, but neither did anybody else but Hitler. It's not like that was in vogue back in the 40s.
You go to the RNC and it's not full of people who are dressed like SS officers.
Uh-huh.
Anyway.
Well, they're trying to hide it.
But I'd love that. That would be more interesting to me if it was like,
all right.
We're an alternate, it's like we didn't agree with everything the Empire did, but, the galaxy needs order, so let's just not throw the baby out with the bathwater when it comes to fascism.
All right, let's move on.
Anyway, let's move on.
We're a half hour in and we're still on the crawl.
But it shows me that they're not even trying at this point.
Okay, fine.
Villains. And then we go into a greatest hits package, restoring peace and justice to the galaxy.
Sure.
It's preparing us for the fan fiction that will unfold.
Sending best pilots, whatnot.
Yeah, and in the final paragraph, you're like, the plot similarities to Star Wars begin to emerge. You're sort of like, So they're basically it's the same plot as Star Wars, except they've inverted the droid giving Obi-Wan the clue, and now Obi-Wan's giving the droid the clue.
Correct. Except,
and by the way, we'll get there on the definition of the word clue, because there's a big difference between plans to a planet-killing battle station and a bit of a map. Okay, those are not the same. Anyway.
There's lots of talk in these movies, too, because this piece of this map, and then by the time you get to whatever that planet is that the Emperor's on...
Well, you said it perfectly, Planet Island, Yeah.
You
can't call it anything other than that.
But that's the thing, is that...
Where Father Ted lives.
There's so much talk. There's so much talk in these movies about unplottable places and places that don't show up on star maps, and it's all so convenient. And then there's like this tiniest part of this
Yeah.
of this key to a map, but meanwhile R2's had like 90% of this map just inside his bucket for decades, it seems.
And Attack of the Clones shows us exactly how you should handle this. It's like, like what's missing in this map? That's where you go.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
It's that so like, and the fact that, Yoda comes up with that means Luke must be sitting there shitting himself the entire time. It's like, as soon as they realize that I'm in the bit of the map that's not there, they're gonna head straight here and find me. Yoda figured this out like over 60 years ago.
Oh boy. Well, we have a
traditional drop
pan
down space shot.
Yeah, I was just gonna say.
And then we begin with a shot that has not decided what it wants to be.
What, the ship blocking the planet?
The dick silhouette of the Star Destroyer is sort of like, I don't know if the shot is this or this or this. We'll do it all. And cut. It's not a very strong opening shot. I think it's a first draft of an opening shot. I know they had real trouble coming up with these.
Yeah,
there's a big debate about the opening shot in the next movie. Rian Johnson wanted something very different than what he eventually did. So I get the struggle of trying to live up to the to the
Star Cruiser,
the underside of the Star Cruiser, and not do a version of that looks like Spaceballs. That's the
right.
I think that's the struggle, right?
Yeah.
Because that's it's like that parody in Spaceballs of that shot is so spot on. You have to work hard against that, but I feel like they were just like, let's throw everything at this shot that we want to do, rather than going for one clear visual idea in the shot.
All right, fine.
And for effects that are pretty much flawless, even at this stage, J.J. Abrams sure thinks he has to use darkness and editing a lot to disguise what's on screen. Like,
I think he thinks I think he thinks he's building, atmosphere.
Well, it's the legacy. So, that expressionism that kind of carried the style of his Star Trek reboot seems to. There's a kind of nod to that here with the the landing of the stormtroopers, seeing it from
the darkness inside with the strobe light on them.
Yeah,
feels.
And there's a lot, it's like a lot in his Star Trek reboot of seeing it from an experiential point of view, and he's kind of doing the same here. It doesn't really continue into the rest of the movie, but in this scene, it feels like this is a kind of. He's connecting the dots between what he did in the Star Trek reboot and what he's doing here.
Mm-hmm.
BB-8 begins by looking down the barrel of the lens, which is hilarious because if it's an effect shot, there's no camera there. He's looking into a camera that doesn't exist. Although the genius of the design of BB-8, as I understand it, is you never know what's a puppet and what's a digital effect.
Uh-huh.
Because people have seen live BB-8 and gone, okay, so everything I thought was digital about BB-8 can be done practically.
Yeah.
So it's like the opposite. It's like the literal opposite of what you think has to be digital, is actually just the best puppet in the world.
So that's one of the things I want to say is that I think this is like BB-8. I think is one of the reasons I took to this movie quickly. The first time I saw it, because the prequels seem to think, well, we already have our beloved droids. We can't do another character. We just have to fan service. Why in the world would we ever? And these three movies at least say, no, you can do something else, and I really appreciated that.
But they have to transcend those two droids, and I don't think BB-8 does. I think, he is very much an R2-D2 surrogate, especially the way that R2-D2 is used in this movie. It's very clear that that's what they're going for.
Yeah.
It's kind of enough of the same robot that, again, you get the sense they haven't really tried that hard to break the mold of of what they came up with R2D2.
I.
That said,
It's enough for me.
That said, and I think this is also this may have been a backfire, but everything I respond to emotionally in all these three movies has only to do with droids.
Mm-hmm.
BB-8 in this movie, C-3PO in Rise of Skywalker, and R2D2 in Last Jedi.
Okay.
The moments that affected me most have nothing to do with humanoids.
I get affected by the character of Rey, even the character of Kylo Ren.
Yeah.
They're together.
I'm being facetious, but honestly, nothing. We'll get there, but nothing moved me more in this series than the story of C-3PO through these three movies.
Mm-hmm.
And BB-8 in this movie.
Okay.
And when you find out that Ben Schwartz and Bill Hader are kind of in control of the audio characterization, I'm like, yeah, I mean, they're like, especially Bill Hader is too good an actor for some of that to come through. I mean, I'm sure they were just phoning it in and just going bleep bloop,
having a fun time. Yeah.
Some of that residue of of Barry, I think comes through.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, we're straight into Max von Sydow or Sydow.
Yeah.
The heft of veteran European actors,
right?
Which is one of
lending some class.
Like, this movie is really good at disguising itself as a good movie.
Yeah, trying to lend some class to the proceedings.
Oh my god! And when was he? He was like big from the 50s to the 70s, 80s.
Mm-hmm.
So it has a feel of a classic just by having him in it.
Absolutely.
And I mean, so many movies have drawn on him as an actor to give themselves that kind of heft. Like, even as far back as The Exorcist, that movie begins with him.
Yeah.
And then begins and ends with him, and that was very deliberate to make the movie feel like an instant classic.
Sure. He lends that gravitas to the proceedings.
And he's a surrogate Obi-Wan, but you don't mind because he's an actor of the level of an Alec Guinness. So that helps. And then they have a conversation which I've described as a reverse Bechdel test. It's two men talking about a woman.
Yeah.
The only problem is one of them refuses to recognize her professional status, so it kind of undoes undoes its own progressiveness in that moment where he refuses to call her a general.
Yeah.
And calls her and says she'll always be a princess to me. It's like, that's really patronizing to say.
Well, they think they're doing something good by recognizing her royalty, I think, and then they don't realize that they're undoing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's literally so we know who they're talking about.
Yeah, but that's stupid. We all know who Princess Leia is.
I'm not saying it's not stupid. Believe me, I'm not saying that. But it's unthinking. Like, they were like, hey, we had this conversation that you've probably never seen in a Hollywood movie before where two men talk about a woman.
Yeah.
Let's end it with them saying, I refuse to acknowledge her meritocratic achievements in this world.
Now, I have notes here because obviously the stormtroopers and Kylo Ren are going to show up and Poe has to take off. I noticed, like with Oscar Isaac and certain other actors, almost everybody except Daisy Ridley, and I don't know that I see Kylo Ren running a lot, so I don't see Adam Driver doing it. But whenever I see some of these actors, when I see
unless he has to,
when I see these actors running, they don't look like natural runners. It looks difficult for them.
That's a really good point. It's very full. I mean, it's forced.
So proud of yourself.
The dialogue reflects that too, because they talk in this kind of Memetian clipped way that they think that who are, there are a few screenwriters on this, and presumably they think that that's gonna make it seem. It's gonna seem like efficient dialogue, like that kind of Memetian rapid fire patter. It's gonna add to the urgency of the scene, but it it's like this. They're speaking in couplets essentially.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we have to leave, you have to hide. It's like, that's, that it's like you just want solid dialogue. You don't need it to be as crafted as that.
Sure.
To the point where it's almost poetry, almost.
Almost bad poetry.
Almost it's the end of The Mighty Wind. That's almost poetry, almost. Yeah, so I think that is that the forced running as well is sort of like, we don't need to do this. But credit where credit is due. This is where I'm gonna praise J.J. Abrams as a director, because he makes the decision in these scenes that defies directorial modernism, which is he makes it, and I guess he's thinking back to Spielberg, his unofficial mentor. I don't know if Spielberg would like to be considered that way, but he certainly considers it. I don't know if it's a mutual relationship. He decides to rack focus between faces rather than cutting.
Yeah.
And I'm like, most modern directors ain't gonna do that.
Yeah.
So the classicalism of his training, as it were, tells him that what would Spielberg do here? He'd rack focus between these faces. He wouldn't insert a cut where it didn't need to be.
Yeah.
Because he learned from the CinemaScope era of cinema. You didn't cut because you had this huge frame. You just moved the camera, or you racked focus. So, and he doubles down on that immediately, because there's a one shot of the troopers coming out of the ship, and there's this tracking shot which must have been all set up practically, and the camera just moves, so it must have been choreographed as a single shot, because they don't do one cut, or if they do the cut, they hide it very well. And again, like, the difference to the viewer is negligible. It looks like the same shot. Yeah. So, and it still requires incredible choreography.
Yeah, those are the things that I started to gravitate to.
Yeah.
Well, whenever I watch this movie, but when I saw it the first time, for sure.
So, yes, he's got that Zack Snyder, that kind of expressionistic Zack Snyder disease, but he can also bring it back to the essentials of cinema as a canvas art rather than an editing medium. So, there you go. Didn't think you were going to hear that, did you?
No.
In this episode.
And so Kylo Ren's going to kill Max von Sydow.
Yeah.
And Poe is going to, like, what, can I ask you, what do you think about how the Force is used from series to series?
Oh, yeah. Force creep.
Is always dramatically changing. Mostly based
on...
a
new superpower.
Yeah, exactly.
It's always been like, at this point, it's up to this point, it's been like one. They add one superpower in. They kind of drop a new Force superpower in every movie, but it goes wild in these movies. They add 3 or 4 each movie, and the Rise of Skywalker just completely reinvents the idea of the Force.
Agreed.
But they're doing it that it's like, oh, there's a new superpower that we didn't know the Force could do before. Are you talking about stopping the laser blast?
The laser blast, yeah.
I mean, it's a good button.
It is a good button
of like it dropping out of midair at the end, but it's sort of like. So I mean, this is the thing. It's like you think about what we've seen of the Force before, and it just doesn't add up.
I like the mystery of it in Empire when when Han Solo's blasting away and you're like, well, what's going on? Is it just hitting his hand? Is he shoving it aside? What's going on there? I always liked that, and now we can it's literally
freeze time.
Yeah. I think Force powers have increased based solely on what they can do with effects.
Yeah, completely. It's effects driven. Yeah,
and that's the part of it that kind of drives me nuts.
Of like,
let's do something different.
What else can we do that we haven't done before? But when you're doing that, and that's fine to do that, but you have to sort of extrapolate from logic of what you've seen before, and
Yeah.
they don't do that.
I think they think they
go
are.
back to the drawing board every single time.
When I see Luke jump out of the carbonite bin,
Yeah, that's the only Flit Jedi jump, isn't it?
I didn't realize that meant that the jumping ability that they had that you start seeing in the prequels.
Yeah, it's the prequel's fault for the flipping.
That
sure.
go nuts, but
the flipping in these movies, my God, it's like someone's got like a button stuck on the console of a video game, and your character is just continually flipping.
Yeah.
So, and this is the other project of this scene, of this kind of establishing scene, this sort of like not cold open,
mm-hmm.
is to sort of like is to tell you like everything's gonna be the same. So we're still gonna have X-wings. Oh, look at BB-8. He's a bit like R2-D2, and you know what? He goes in the sunroof of the. He sits in the sunroof of the X-wing as well. The viewfinder shot. It's sort of like, okay, so we're gonna have one example of every classic trope in this movie, and there's your viewfinder shot.
Yeah.
Burning the baboon-faced man's homestead. You're like, okay, we're burning a homestead already. All right,
right.
So you're throwing everything at the wall here.
Well,
it's
even just
having
having
Star Wars is coming at you thick and fast.
Even just having Poe say, "So who talks first? You talk first? I talk first?" You immediately want to put the audience at ease of. So this is your new Han Solo.
Exactly. This is your new Han Solo, and he's not going to talk like he's a senator on C-SPAN.
Right.
Right. He's going to talk like a person.
Mm-hmm.
Again, that restoring the idea of normalcy. That it's like not every piece of dialogue has to be like an unwieldy monologue as it was in the prequels.
Right.
And then it continues because he inputs the droid with the message, and it's like, okay, so now we're in shot-for-shot remake territory.
Yeah.
This is you could superimpose Leia putting the floppy disk in R2 at this point. So this scene is about standard setting, and that's standard.
I think it's about. I think it's about trying to. Oddly, I think it's about trying to put people at ease. This is going to be a Star Wars film, not not whatever the prequels are.
You might as well have Poe turn to the audience and say, George Lucas was going to make this all about midichlorians,
Yeah, right.
We saved it. We saved you from that. But that said, where as minute as the differences are, they do matter. So we've never seen anything from the perspective of a stormtrooper before.
Right.
So that moment with the blood on the mask where you see the stormtrooper as a human being for the first time ever.
Mm-hmm.
And part of that is a rebuttal to the prequels, which turned them all into clones. And now we're saying that... And I think this is the first time we decided this, that they weren't retroactively clones in the original Star Wars. This is the first time we're saying, like, they kind of abandoned the clone plan and went just to child
kidnapped children.
Yeah. So they're human beings. So they're, they were what they originally were, which was they're human beings in there.
Yeah.
But this is the first time we've ever done that in an emotional
way.
And,
yeah,
and that struck me at the time, and it strikes me now.
It's still affecting, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's like it's looking for a new emotional perspective that has.
And I think that's the part that kicked in for me. Well, when I still watch it, and then the first time I saw it, because you've been rooting against stormtroopers for 6 full movies now, or robots from the prequels, and then you have this stormtrooper that won't fire, and then the blood on the face, and how quickly you can go from or how quickly you can go to feeling for them.
Yeah.
Because when Gwendolyn turns and looks at him, you fear for him, like he's been caught, like he's in trouble.
And Kylo Ren too is sort of like,
yeah,
someone's not on board here.
Right. I sense uneasiness.
But it turns out that he can sense Finn because Finn is one with the Force. He just didn't get around to telling anyone.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a real plot line in a movie we're gonna cover. Yeah, and it's a really strong precedent for the series, because then the Mandalorian picks up on that with those episodes with the Tusken Raiders, where it's the same thing. It's sort of like let's see what it's like from their perspective, from their lived experience.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about it when we get to Rey. I think that the idea of her as a desert scavenger is kind of starting that work of she's essentially a sand person.
Yeah.
But they've removed the cloth mask and there are people underneath.
Right.
And then the entrance of Kylo Ren, or as I like to call him, public domain Darth Vader. It looks like a Darth Vader costume when you don't have a license from Disney or Lucasfilm. To the point where even the hood that he wears and the robe kind of looks like Skeletor in Masters of the Universe, the Frank Langella Skeletor.
Yeah, a little bit.
But it's so funny when he comes out and it's sort of like, ladies and gentlemen, a tribute to Darth Vader.
Right.
Da 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 da. Disney are not affiliated with any of this content. Da 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 da.
I go back and forth on this all the time from the moment I first saw it, because when you think about it, it's a big task to try and...
Oh, there's no reason why he has to be dressed like Darth Vader because because he's part of a Vader cult. No.
In their minds, though, they feel like they have to Vader him up. But I go back and forth because they're already
walked that back even by the end of this movie. I mean, obviously, when Johnson is like, the first thing he does is fucking smash that master pieces. But even by the end, J.J. Abrams then is going, Adam Driver's under there. I think we might be wasting a really good actor. Take the mask off and keep it off for the rest of the movie.
But I at the very least, I like that. I like that he doesn't have to wear the mask. He thinks this is something he has to do to hide his true self. There's character stuff within it that I'm okay with. I like that it's Snoke himself that tells him to take that fucking thing off. Like, quit hiding.
But yeah. They make lemonade out of it eventually. They make story lemonade out of it eventually. But the moment when he takes off that mask, it's self-defeating because you go, well, Adam Driver's face is so much more interesting than this mask. It's like the Green Goblin, It's like you have
Willem Dafoe.
Willem Dafoe's face is gonna carry the Green Goblin better than this Party City mask you put on it.
Yeah.
And Again, I don't know where I stand on I'm mixed on the idea of they figured out that the audience... I think they figured out early in the movie that the audience was going to be ahead of the curve when it comes to... going to be ahead of the 8-ball when it comes to him being Han and Leia's son.
Yeah.
So they don't make much effort to hide it. And if you're doing like even a cursory rewatch of this movie, the lines, from the dark side, but you did not, and that's not your family. Like, you can figure it out even from this scene, but it very much says to me that we're not going to drag this out into an Empire Strikes Back reveal.
Right.
Okay, we're going to set it up now, and we'll have give the game away about a third into the movie. And part of me likes that because I don't want them to have to go through with the whole subterfuge
with all the nonsense, right?
Yeah. But at the same time, I'm sort of like... But does that mean you can sort of give it away? You could sort of say it now?
Mm-hmm.
Why are we even waiting a third of the movie?
Yeah, I get that.
But it's... I'm sort of mixed on that, I think.
Okay.
But,
Where are you? I think Ray's foraging on old ships.
Oh yeah, we can skip to that. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think we can skip to that.
I think this is
There's I mean, they send BB. There's the transition is sort of sending BB-8 out
sure. Yeah,
into the desert.
he's got the plans and he's doing the R2D2 thing.
He's doing the R2D, yeah, without C-3PO. Although I'm pretty sure one of the guys from the cantina pops out of a hole in the desert at one point. So it's all original trilogy recipe. Yeah, and this is where I have all the notes about the shuttle and the Star Destroyer as like all these barely disguised original designs.
Mm-hmm.
From the Empire period. Haven't even replaced the mouse droid sounds. That's where I'm like, I'm out. Like, the mouse droids sound the same 30 years later? That's not how technology works. Yeah, so removing and there's so many moments in this movie and subsequent movies of people removing helmets. Like, it feels like it happens once or twice in the original Star Wars trilogy, but it happens often here that people take masks off. There seems to be like a...
She's got her goggles and her scarves on.
Yeah.
Inside of dark places.
And I think it's, like it sort of teases the idea, like with Finn being a stormtrooper, that we're going to see the world from the perspective of a sand person.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's what she looks like when we first see her, that shot of her opening the door. And did you think about Jaws 2 when you saw this scene?
No.
Because it's the same move. Well, because she's excavating all these Imperial era ships.
Yeah.
You know, the way Jaws 2 begins with them diving for the wreckage of the... What's the name of the ship in Jaws?
Orca.
I can't commit Jaws to memory. We've had this conversation. I just can't
That's
do it.
fucking offensive. What's the name of this ship? Jesus.
I know, I can't commit Jaws to memory. Jaws 2, however, I remember photographically. But the beginning of that film ends with them diving for the wreck, diving to excavate, and so this is the same
I don't think
thing.
they're excavating. I think they just kind of fall upon it. I don't think they were there on purpose.
Well, okay, but she's scavenging in basically the imagery
wreckage
of the original trilogy. Yeah, the wreckage of the original trilogy, which is a metaphor for what the movie's doing, but I don't know if the movie should be as open about the fact it's doing that. Yes. And this is where But
I guess this is one of the things I liked about this movie, mostly because the original prequel is just so busy and so much shit. I like the sparseness of one person inside of this cavernous ship, just looking around and trying to find shit.
I have that same note. There's a conscious effort to make these desert backgrounds less busy, which is a reaction both to the prequels and I think the special editions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Absolutely.
All the background nonsense that Lucas.
You know what these movies need?
It's like nothing. This is just, and it's these stunning vistas of shipwrecks.
Mm-hmm. It's really beautiful.
They're so epic and impressive. Don't stop to think about it because it undermines the project of the movie. But just to look at cinematically is gorgeous. And the start, I wanted to name check John Williams here because I don't know if anyone's made the Peter and the Wolf comparison to him because he has like a specific theme for every character.
Yeah.
He has the Rey's theme, the Leia's theme, the
Luke theme.
Chancellor Valorum theme. I don't think he came up with a theme for Chancellor Valorum. But like Peter and the Wolf, it's not quite the same because it was like a different instrument for each animal in that opera. But I know he's influenced by classical music, so I wondered whether he picked up that because he's into mixing everyone has a distinct theme, but he kind of mixes it. He sort of he sort of turns it into a kind of wash of different themes happening all at once.
Yeah.
And it's really beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautifully done. It shows he's still trying at, 80 or whatever he was
Right.
at the time. And it's this really fascinating start to the scene, and I wish they kind of leaned into the real time of it a little more. I want the scene to be far longer and more uncut. It's like, would it have really slowed the film down significantly if we saw her packing away her stuff in real time instead of turning it into a montage?
Yeah.
Given that, what is your inspiration? The original Star Wars. All that first half hour of the movie is just wandering through the desert.
Yeah.
And that's what we love about it. So why wouldn't a Star Wars fan be into seeing Rey pack away her stuff into a speeder in the time it takes for her to do that?
Yeah. I mean, it actually lends to the monotony of how she has to survive.
Exactly. Yeah,
it's
you've
a
got
good
to build
thing.
that, and you should. I think they should have like folded in some more dead time into the scenes. Because
Having said that, I think the movie accomplishes what it's setting out to do.
And another sequel I was reminded of, and I think this attests to the theory that modern filmmakers like this movie more than they will care to admit. When she's looking at the old woman scrubbing the junk, the movie it most reminded me of visually was the opening of Star Trek V in the desert. It looked just the same in that moment. It's a great moment in and of itself because it's like it's saying something like and I wish the movie would do this more. It's like the meaning of this scene is clear, but it's done quickly and visually.
Yes, right.
It's sort of like, if I stick around in this desert, I'm gonna end up.
You don't have to hear her say those words, which is great.
Exactly. Yeah. But I was just looking at it and going, this looks like the opening of Star Trek V, and given that Thor: Love and Thunder starts with a tribute to that same scene, I'm like, modern filmmakers, I think, like this movie more than they care to admit.
But it occurs to me too that they kind of mess up within that, or because she's always for so much of this movie she's always talking about getting back to that place. But that one look should make her realize this isn't where I should be. I can't stay here forever.
Yeah.
But I get that there's the dichotomy of, inside of her mind of truly believing that her parents could come back for her.
Yeah.
Or hoping.
Yeah, and that's the problem is as soon as you add it to that storyline, I just stop caring because I know ultimately that storyline is not what it was originally supposed to be. It was retconned once and twice, and so what's the point in caring about that? The fact that it's like, well, why would she? Because it's a good question you bring up of why would she go back to? It's like if she knows that this is a dead end, why would she go back to it? But the movie hasn't made any decisions on that, so why should I care?
Yeah.
That's the problem with the storytelling in all of these movies, I think. But we've got Simon Pegg in a creature suit with his voice altered to the point where I was convinced until this viewing that this was the butler from Downton Abbey. What is the point of putting Simon Pegg in here when you can't tell it's Simon Pegg?
True.
Just ridiculous. I was just like, but the thing is that Downton Abbey connection for me made total sense. Yeah, he sounds like the butler from Downton Abbey who's in Wonka. And I'm like, well, yeah, Downton Abbey is the most popular it ever was in 2015. So, of course, that's exactly what they'd do. They'd hire a British guy from a popular show to be in a Star Wars movie. That's what they always did. But no, it's Simon Pegg in there for some reason. Noted prequel hater Simon Pegg. J.J. Abrams, bitch. So small.
Oh my god.
Okay, we'll get there.
Shots fired.
And this is where I thought, of the small universe syndrome of we're not on Tatooine yet.
Yeah.
Kind of are. There's no discernible difference from this and Tatooine. You might as well have had her go back to Tatooine.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that they didn't change anything about the planet from Tatooine,
Mm-hmm.
speaks to the essential problem of these movies. It's like we want the public domain version of the thing rather than inventing something new.
Yeah,
Because going back to Tatooine is a huge narrative problem, right?
always.
Because then everyone would go, well, why is everything happening on Tatooine, this
Right.
place that's supposed to be the ass end of the galaxy,
Mhm.
and yet it's the most important planet for three trilogies now.
Yeah, right.
But in that you have to create a planet that is somehow different from Tatooine, and I just don't see any different. I see zero difference.
No, well,
from that.
and that's one of the things that you realize. On my first viewing, I thought they did it. It's a real Star Wars movie, and then you start thinking about it, and you're like, this movie's exactly like Episode 4, and they don't say they're on Tatooine, but they're on Tatooine. Like,
Yeah.
like it's a desert planet.
It's a desert planet.
Everything's the same.
I also did. And this is an aspect of Rey that people really responded to, but I really disliked, which is that she's a Star Wars fan.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like it in movies when characters are fans of the franchise that they're in. Especially when they use women that way, because it feels like specifically a waste of women to turn them into fangirls. And this movie does that twice with two different women. But it's kind of funny, like when you see the homemade Star Wars toys that she's constructed. I'm just like, well, I guess that Kenner line never got delivered. She just had the empty box, and they could never find what ship she was hiding in, and so she had to make her own. It's like really sad. And it's like it's all a matter of degree, because someone, if I make that argument, someone could throw back at me, well, what about Luke and that toy spaceship he's got,
Mm-hmm.
which turns out was given to him by Obi-Wan. Yeah,
right.
In parts of the canon you should ignore. But it seems like more that she's situated as a fan of the franchise Star Wars. Like, that to me was just like, yeah, Luke's got these pilot fantasies. He's heard about the Academy. He's heard about the Rebellion. He wants to be like a pilot for one of those. Like, it works in world, even though it's represented through a toy. It's in world. But this feels like, it's like, she's a Star Wars fangirl who's too poor to buy the official merchandise, so she's made her own. Anyway. I didn't care, and I know people really like that. It's like, oh, she's a fan of Star Wars too. It's great to have that in the movie, and I'm like, why? Isn't that just breaking the fourth wall?
Mm-hmm.
Which, by the way, I don't mind, but I don't think it adds anything.
You want it to be a little more clever than that.
You want it to be a little more clever than that, like George Lazenby looking in the camera and saying,
the other
never
fellow
happened to the other fella. Yeah, much better for some reason. But, again, and this, maybe...
But I connect with Rey in these moments. It's
brilliant. I mean, it's such a... I just wish they'd leaned into it more. I really like the whole setup of her. And I really... something I really like. I don't know if it belongs in Star Wars, but I really like it. It's good sci-fi. The astronaut bread.
Yeah, I really dig that moment.
To the point where I think we should be working on this in the real world.
Absolutely, me too.
I think we should be trying to make this happen. I mean, you go hiking and camping. Can you imagine at the end of the day putting that powder in the water and you've got like a full
muffin
loaf? That would revolutionize your world, wouldn't it?
Oh, I would love it.
So, but I did watch it and I go, I like the fact that it introduced the idea of dirty space, which is so essential to Star Wars as a franchise. But I was like, it's a bit too much science fiction in my fantasy.
No,
It's hard. It's hard. No, I mean, this is like if you saw this in Planet of the Apes, you'd be like, oh, that's cool. You know, it's like, that's cool sci-fi. I'm like, I don't know if this is if Star Wars is sci-fi enough to withhold this level of, because like I say, this is the thing that this is like hoverboards. This not only
Right.
can exist, it should exist.
It should. Right.
I would like whole third world countries could survive. More tomato? Yes, please. You know, it's that level of social revolution. But anyway, I mean, I think most people, like, if you ask them what's your favorite thing about Force Awakens, they'll be like, astronaut bread.
That bread.
And she, and it's like, it's so simple as well, because presumably they made a flan, put a pin in it, deflated, and then filmed it backwards.
Oh, I keep wondering about that. I thought it might just be an all digital effect.
I'm gonna, yeah, I mean, it could, that's the thing, it could be, it's that good.
Yeah.
But I bet they did it practically. And I bet
hope.
it wouldn't look as good if it really were a digital shot.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, I think it's brilliant. And I also like this period because it's before Daisy Ridley starts speaking, and I think that's where she's at her strongest, when she's non-speaking. And that is not a slight against her. I think she's just, well, it is a bit of a slight against her.
I'm such a fan of her. She's everything for me.
She's got that lack of elocution that modern British untrained actors have.
Okay.
That you would never have got away with original time. And I say that as someone who's got terrible elocution, but I'm not leading a Star Wars franchise.
Not yet.
But when she's silent and doing stuff, I'm all in. But as soon as she starts speaking, I'm like, she didn't breathe properly through that line, and all these kind of like, it's like, I don't know, like, this is the thing. It's like you see Gene Hackman, and you're like, you never think at any point Gene Hackman's gonna run out of breath.
Mm-hmm.
But when I look at actors like Emma Watson and Daisy Ridley, I'm like, you're gonna run out of breath before you finish that line, and you need to open your mouth a little bit more when you speak, because it's all getting caught in the lips.
I'm okay with her. I'm
okay with her too. I just prefer her when she's not speaking.
I one of the things I gravitated to, though, that speaks to what you're saying is I am all in on her when we are close up on her face and you're just like looking at her eyes.
Yeah. I think that's why she got cast, right? I mean,
probably.
She was probably screen tested and they were like, this is going to work visually. We can, send her a voice coach. No, I mean, I'm not. I think probably, and that's probably the right call overall.
Mm-hmm.
Given that no dialogue in this movie matters at all.
Yeah.
Nothing anyone says out loud matters.
They have, like, it's funny with this series. They have lots of dialogue that they think is lofty and important. Just. Like, it just kind of...
Well, they make the huge mistake of thinking that everything has to be spelled out in dialogue.
Right.
And, again, like, go back to the George Lucas problem. Have you rewatched these movies? Have you rewatched the original Star Wars trilogy?
Mm-hmm.
Like, look at that scene between Han and Luke in Empire, before they break off.
Yeah, right.
Hoth. No one says shit in that scene.
Nobody says a fucking thing. Right.
What their relationship, what they're saying there and then, what they mean to each other overall, it's all there.
Yeah.
Just like these movies kind of hate silence, right? They're like, we got to do something to break the silence. Like it's the do I speak first, do you speak first?
Mm-hmm.
It's like, oh well, why don't we just let them stare at each other?
Mm-hmm.
That'd be cool. And then eventually someone says something. It sounds like in Seinfeld when they're trying to write their pilot script. It's like, you come in.
I was about to say, that's exactly what happens. They do stare at each other for a while, and then what he chooses to say is, so who talks first?
Yeah. And I just think you need to be, like, all the big reunion moments could do with less dialogue and less expositional dialogue as well. Like, they immediately go into talking about the plot, and I'm like, we don't need to restack the plot.
Nope.
it's a misuse. It's a misuse of these characters to like who are re-meeting for the first time in.
Yeah, they do that a lot.
Who
I can't
knows how.
remember. I think it's 3PO who, at one point, is by the way, we need that piece of the map. I'm like, we already know this, fuckface. Like, Jesus.
When they do it with C-3PO, I think it's justified because that's his character.
Okay, I'll give you that.
But we never looked to Han Solo for
But
exposition.
it didn't seem like they were doing it like a 3PO joke. They were doing it like we have to catch the audience up.
Sometimes they do.
Yeah.
And we'll get there. I'm a big supporter of C-3PO in all three of these movies. I think for some reason they figured out that character, and at the expense of literally everybody else.
Yeah, you might. Yeah,
C-3PO is more the C-3PO he should be in these three movies than he is in any other Star Wars movie.
I agree.
I don't know if it's like there's one autistic guy on the writing team who's like, I know how to write this. I know how to write this droid. I know who this droid is, okay?
That's great.
My God, whenever he speaks, I'm just like... And, Anthony Daniels, how long has he been doing this? He doesn't feel like he's phoning it in.
No.
I think he does his best acting in one of these movies, as C-3PO in one of these movies. Anyway, we'll get there. That's a long time. A long time.
Yeah, come on. Let's stay on track. Meanwhile, Kylo Ren is mind-humping Poe. Mind-raping.
Mind-humping Poe, and this is where we... Right. And this is where we meet General Hux, who...
Hux.
Is a character from Flash Gordon.
Yeah.
But maybe not intentionally so.
So this is...
When it's the two of them in the hallway, I'm like, this looks like a scene from Flash Gordon.
Yeah.
But I don't know if that's... But it might be unintentional Flash Gordon. You know what I mean? It might be like, it's like... Did we drift into the camp territory of the original Battlestar Galactica?
I can't fathom, to me, like, I just don't like the way this character is written in all three of these movies.
And acted.
And so one of my questions for you...
His first line read is one of the worst line reads I've ever seen in any movie. I'm sorry, Donald Gleason, but
That's how I feel.
You misspoke.
Yeah.
This was the wrong way to say this line.
I mean,
I've seen athletes playing transporter chiefs in Star Trek who do better line reads than these.
Yeah. We're on the same page for this particular character and this actor, and I normally think of...
It gets better.
Donald Gleason as like a good actor.
Yeah.
A capable actor.
But this is, I think the problem is, and it's like the Billy Zane in Titanic problem, like, Billy Zane understood that his character... that what the material he was in was camp.
Mm-hmm.
It turns out it was unintentionally camp, and he was just reading it at the level that it was rather than what it wanted to be. And I think the same is kind of true here. Like Donald Gleason's going, so this guy is like, like Ming the Merciless, or something from that kind of level of camp space opera.
I honestly think he thinks he's comic relief.
Well, that's a problem.
That's not good. Because he should be a Tarkin surrogate.
Yeah.
Right?
Was he a redhead in Harry Potter as well, or am I Mandela affecting that? He was, okay.
Like later on. He's one of the Weasley's older brothers.
It does, I mean, they both feel like children.
Mm-hmm.
But...
That's the other thing, is I think he's too young.
Adam Driver is supposed to be, he's not.
Right.
Or maybe again, he's like, oh, so these two guys are just kids playing around with fascism.
Mm-hmm.
Which is not wrong. That's how it's written, but it just doesn't work. It's like it's just unsatisfactory.
Imagine the dynamic you get by switching it to an older actor. Because then...
Well, they do eventually. That's why they bring in Richard E. Grant.
I know. But considering his character arc, and by the way, like when we get to Richard E. Grant, I remember thinking specifically, thank God for Richard E. Grant. Like, he gets it. But
I have a lot to say about their casting choices of First Order / Imperial officers. I don't know why I make the distinction because the films refuse to, but for the purposes of discussion, I will. But certainly, that makes more sense as a counterpoint to Kylo Ren.
Yeah. And way more interesting, too. Because...
It's just... It's too early for it... And also, he's too early for him to be... It's slightly too early for him to be Trump as well.
Yeah.
Because someone, like, looking back at this who, like, you know, a historian who'll be like, well, that's sort of in the same time frame, won't know that they just got, you know, there's this red-headed fascist making these kind of...
Yeah.
Because when the speech he makes to the First Order is basically Trump's inauguration speech.
Yeah, right.
To the point where I think he based it on that. But this is 2015.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we weren't expecting him to become president.
Yeah.
I don't think they had that foresight, but that's what it looks like now. But I think it's less clever than that. I think it is just like... this stupid guy is in charge of this big organization, and
Right.
and that story can be superimposed onto the Trump narrative very easily.
Yeah, right.
But I don't think that was the intention at all. I think it is just like, it's just weak writing and acting.
Yeah. All right. Well, nice tangent. I'm glad we think alike on that character and the acting within it.
Yeah. And this is...
By the way, if you're going to, like, mind rape Poe, you could have done that back down on the planet and found out that the robot was, like, a mile away.
No, but that's the thing. It's all about getting the thing that looks like what we tortured Han Solo in on screen.
Yeah, that's true.
That's their impulse. That's sort of like... doing it on the planet doesn't have the same nostalgia value as putting him inside the upright dentist's chair.
Yeah, exactly.
Where they, where Han Solo got sparked.
Right.
Sparked into extreme paleness. Meanwhile, there's a bromance brewing between Poe and Finn. There's a bromance brewing between Poe and Finn.
Yeah, right.
It was so funny because, like, as I do all these Star Wars movies, I try to watch them with a historical eye. Like, what was going on at the time when these movies were made that makes them different from making this in 77 or making it in 99? And to me, like, I was like, this is, you know, bromance is, when I think of that, I think of Friends, right? I think of that kind of, you know, Joey and Chandler kind of relationship. And I'm like, well, 2015's kind of too late for that. So I think culture's done with bromance. So why, like, but it's sort of too early for it to be intentionally a same-sex couple as well.
Yeah, right.
So you're in a kind of no man's land between bromance and same-sex couple. It definitely should have just cut their losses, given what's happened in culture since, and just gone, let them fuck. I mean, who cares?
Yeah, well,
no, I'm serious. But
I think one of the problems for these three movies is that they have no idea what to do with Finn, because Finn is the surrogate Leia, and Rey is the surrogate Luke.
It's Star Wars bingo.
Yeah.
It's just totally randomized. It's like a pinball machine. It's just totally randomized. It's like the way that South Park thinks Family Guy is written, with the man.
Yeah, with the tank of sharks and yeah.
But so, well, we'll get there. But I think they should have stuck to their original plan of Poe dies when he dies. Because if he's not in the rest of this movie and the next two movies, then that gives Finn a chance to breathe and become something.
Yeah.
But if you keep Poe alive, then you've got one more character to deal with, and there's just no room for Finn to breathe in there. I mean, there's also the problem of adding new characters to the mix every 3 or 4 scenes that you have to invent an arc for that has to intersect with the arc that you're writing for the main characters. So it's a big mess, and Finn kind of gets caught in that web.
Well, to the extent that in the next movie he has the same arc. in the next movie, he has the same exact arc that he has in this movie.
I would say even less so, because that his arc in Last Jedi, and we'll get there, has nothing to do with him as a person.
Yeah.
In fact, it ignores who we know Finn to be. We'll get there.
Yeah.
But that's my operational theory about that Finn has to learn a lesson that he already knows.
Exactly.
From experience.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I was, I was just like, oh, if this was like 1 or 2 years, because by Rise of Skywalker they have the confidence to throw in a lesbian kiss.
Yeah, right.
And I think they're doing that because they know what they should have made Finn. That whatever
you get their celebrity couple name.
Shipping. Yeah, they get their ship name. I think that clearly they should have done that, and they were flirting with it as a subtext at this point in a way that, looking back, sort of seems kind of patronizing.
In this same movie, he seems to be clearly falling in love with Rey as well.
Yeah, but it's like, again, it's that sort of gay subtext. It's like the real, like in Nightmare 2, the kid has a girlfriend.
Yeah, true.
Right? He has a girlfriend, but he knows he's gay, and that's what Freddy Krueger's there to draw out of him. So similarly here, it could just be that, like, I think I'm into this hot scavenger woman, but there's this pilot I can't get off my mind. There's this pilot I can't get off my mind, and whenever we meet, we have these moments that I can't explain.
Yeah, right.
And those moments are in the movie. They're moments where they just look at each other longingly, and nothing happens. So I think the problem is they've got 1 foot in the bromance era and 1 foot in the same-sex couple era, but they're too removed from each of those to have the confidence to do it.
Yeah.
Also, Disney.
Yeah, right.
Can't be discounted in this discussion, but and they get in a so Finn helps Poe escape.
Yeah, you need a pilot.
Which was in my pitch for my treatment that I didn't write. For the Star Wars sequels. So this is what really, when I see this scene, I'm like, oh, this pisses me off so much.
What, our sequels that you pitched?
No. My like before these movies came out, I started to write a treatment of what I would do in the Star Wars sequels, and this was one of my ideas that someone in the whatever the organization was helped the hero escape. It was Luke in my version, but whatever.
Okay.
That's by the by.
By the by.
There's like
Could you be any more British?
There's a oh, there's a great. By the way, in this scene, I think we have the best British, let's just say Imperial officer in the entire trilogy, and he's in it for like 10 seconds. Pip Torrens from The Crown, when they're escaping, the TIE fighter, which is on
the hose,
bike chained.
Yeah.
Yes, it's bike chained, and it's just the guy in the panorama. I'm like, yes, that is who you cast. He's not too famous, but he's just famous enough. And he plays a secretary in the Crown. I'm like, oh, that's the guy. That's who you get. That's the equivalent. But anyway, one of the kind of red flags to me of terrible showrunners, or writer producers, hyphenates, is when you see the same bad dialogue in different franchises that they do. So, like, Stephen Moffat was in control of Doctor Who and Sherlock Holmes simultaneously, and for some reason, both Doctor Who and Sherlock Holmes were saying things like, "It's Christmas," for no reason. And in these scenes, you've got Finn saying, "I can fix this,"
right?
Which is Chekhov from Star Trek. And I'm just like, come up with a different idea, or at least express it differently in dialogue. It also reinforces that all your characters are just chances. Like, there's no one in J.J. Abrams' movies has earned anything or learned anything. They're all doing it for the first time.
Yeah, right.
Regardless of, and that's not satisfying to watch. like someone accidentally master a skill first time round.
Mhm.
Which is what seems to be happening here. Like, these people shouldn't know how to do what they're doing, and yet they all do it very well first time round.
Mhm.
Because they have to, because of
Yeah, but I mean, they'd probably argue they don't do it so well. They get caught on the hose. They got to blow shit up. Then they would say it's not perfect. But I understand what you're saying. Poe can fly the TIE fighter, and
yeah, it gets worse with. I mean, Rey's the real problem here. Is like, how does Rey know how to fly the Falcon?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she just seems to be a good pilot, but
through having like unscrewed a lot of
exactly
space breaks.
They don't know how to. They don't know how to. They didn't know how to solve that problem.
Yeah,
so they
Mary sued her.
We talk about that with Luke in Star Wars.
Luke's got some really good notes for The Force Awakens, by the way.
Yeah,
we'll get there, but his first scene is basically it's like, I have some notes for The Force Awakens.
All right, we've got a good start. Why don't we take our first break? We've only been talking an hour and a half.
Oh dear, really? Have we?
Yeah.
Oh no. Okay. All right. Well, I guess we should take a break.
Yeah, we'll take a break and come back with a second half that might be the second half of a first episode for this movie.
Oh no. Yeah, we're not far in, are we?
No.
I'm sorry. I feel like this is my fault.
It is.
And I know you feel the same.
But we'll be back, and we'll not be talking any faster through this story than we are.
I like to think I know something about beer, but nowadays even I get overwhelmed when confronted by the exhaustive selection of craft beers they have at bars, breweries, and even grocery stores. Back in the day you had one, maybe two craft beers to choose from, and if you were confused, you ordered a Guinness. But in beerstinations like San Diego, the craft beer options lately are in double, sometimes even triple digits. So what's a beer drinker to do? You need what I need, the Vegas Beer Guys. Your beer of choice should be a perfect blend of malt and hops. And so a live show about beer needs that same balance. And the Vegas Beer Guys matches beer expert Dan Aker with self-proclaimed beer novice Stephen J. Weiss. The results are eminently drinkable. They're on Facebook, they're on Instagram. They'll try new beers, they'll tell you about beer. Think of them as your beer Sherpas guiding you up a foamy-headed mountain to reach the peak of your pint. God, I need a beer.
And we're back, ladies and gentlemen. Tom and I are here, slowly moving our way through The Force Awakens.
Oh my god.
The 2015 film directed by J.J. Abrams.
Honestly, this is the problem. When you said we've been talking for an hour and a half, I genuinely thought we hadn't gone longer than 30 minutes. Ironically, like when we do episodes on Star Wars, we go into the Nexus from Star Trek.
Yeah.
Where time means nothing. You're just
there, chopping woods in Idaho.
Forever. Not Iowa. Apologies for mentioning Star Trek so much in the Star Wars podcast, but
that's great.
J.J. Abrams kind of broke the seal on that, I think.
Yeah.
I noticed that at one point in this movie, there's a location called Kelvin Ridge, which I feel is J.J. Abrams tooling with Star Wars fans who hate Star Trek.
Mm.
And I use the word tooling deliberately.
Of course you did. All right, stay on target, would you, please?
Okay. It's just like busting worm rats back home.
So they escape, but they get shot rather quickly and then fall back to whatever this planet is, Jakku.
Jakku, yes.
Tatooine.
Not Tatooine. Yes. This shows you how many notes I wrote and how slowly I went through these movies, because I was busy. I wrote the same note for 2 different movies because this is our first appearance of quicksand.
Yeah.
Not only in the J.J. Abrams Star Wars films, but in Star Wars in total.
Period.
We've never had quicksand before. And I made exactly the same note, which I'm surprised such a matinee influence franchise has never done quicksand before. But they're just testing the waters here because no one gets caught in quicksand. I mean, the ship gets caught in quicksand, but no one. But then I'm like, oh, they followed up on that in Rise of Skywalker.
No, yeah, they do get stuck, and all it does is become Harry Potter, where they sink to the bottom.
But was it not a surprise to you that they'd not done quicksand up to this point?
Yeah, considering all the desert shit they're doing. Yeah,
desert shit and the fact that this comes from matinee serials where, which made a whole generation fear quicksand unnecessarily.
There's things that, upon reflection, when you rewatch this movie, feel awfully convenient, which is the separating of Poe and Finn.
Well, he was supposed to be. They were originally going to kill him, so he was supposed to be dead, which would have been great. I mean, it would have been a the classic Hitchcock misdirect.
So do you know more about this than, because I've never read about...
Oh, they're originally going to kill him at this point. Yeah, they were going to do a Janet Leigh on him.
So what made
set him up and then kill him? Like everything, they walked it back because they were like, oh, he's given a good performance. I'm sure we'll find something for him to do.
Okay.
And they didn't.
No, he blows up the...
No, I mean,
whatever they're fucking calling this thing. Oh, yeah, no.
And this is what I mean about that.
They try to add a last-minute love story.
They clunked up they clunked up everyone else's arc because they had to deal with Poe as well.
Yeah.
But I mean, it would have, it would have been a real move to kill him off at this point after having established him this way. So they should have stuck with their guns, I think.
Agreed.
But I think they just didn't want to burn having Oscar Isaac in their movie.
Okay. Well, meanwhile, Finn moves on and is in need of water, and then he meets Rey and BB-8.
I like this scene too. I don't know if it's just, again, it looks like Star Trek V: The Final Frontier, but all this desert market stuff, like him going to the water trough and drinking water with the giant rhinoceros. I think actually one of the pluses of these movies is their alien creatures. I
do too. I like that creature that pecks. It's like a woodpecker that pecks metal. Yeah, basically.
Yeah. And this is and the fact that it's just like, it's not doing comedy for us. I think that's the distinction. It's kind of like drinking its water and then it knocks Finn out of the way. Yeah. It's like, it's not a slapstick. It's not like a droid panel beating or something.
Yeah,
like, it's just sort of, it's just there and it's like part of the scenery, I think. And the fact that, something we've really never seen in Star Wars before to the same extent, where he's like asking people for water and everyone goes up to seems to speak a different language.
Yeah, right.
And it's like they've never really accounted for that before in Star Wars. It's sort of like...
Yeah, some of these creatures speak English and some don't.
Communities. Yeah. How does everyone communicate with each other? And I love the fact that everyone's just going, bleh, and like that to everything he says. Like, I remember laughing in the theater, and I laughed this time, too.
And then on top of it, I'll say, this movie comes out in 2015. Which is about a year, I think, before Me Too starts, right?
I think we have similar notes about this scene because it's very clear that Rey is going to fight her own battles.
Yeah.
Which is...
And I appreciated that the first time I saw it, and
me too.
Every time I see it since.
It's sad because it really is film feminism 101, but for woman light, action driven series, this is an important intervention. Because even down to the sort of the trope of the male hero takes the woman's hand. Right, the fact that they make attention to that, she said, "Stop taking my hand.
Knock it off. I can run without you." But I think
the problem is sort of like having set this bar. I think that she goes too quickly into Mary Sue territory. You know this concept of the Mary Sue?
Mm-mm.
So it has weird origins. It comes from Star Trek fan.
No, for crying out loud.
So Mary Sue was like someone did a parody of all the Star Trek fan fiction they'd read, and they created this character called Mary Sue, who was this perfect lieutenant on her first day in Starfleet. Because basically every Star Trek fan fiction story began with, "It's my first day in Starfleet. I'm this lieutenant. I can do everything perfectly." So all that happens is she gets complimented by Kirk, Spock, and McCoy and everyone in Star Trek. So it's like living out the fantasy of fans.
Okay.
That you're gonna, So this term came up, the Mary Sue, to describe characters who are introduced in these kind of fan fiction adjacent franchise movies like this.
Yeah.
Who are immediately perfect.
Yeah.
And have no discernible... They can do everything for the first time.
Yeah.
And if you look at her relationship between Han Solo in the movie, that feels like a fan fiction narrative of, oh my god, I'm hanging out with Han Solo and he's telling me how great I am.
Yeah.
So, I think the problem with setting the bar that high on her this early, in terms of being able to do everything for herself, it kind of bleeds into she can do anything the first time without having to learn it, or without there being any learning curve on anything.
Sure.
And that, I know, was a big criticism of the characterization.
Okay.
So, we'll come back to that, but you're absolutely right. It's needed.
I hear you on that front.
Yeah.
But within this moment,
this is good. Yeah.
Yeah. And what I especially like is they actually come up with a very funny button for it. I really love that moment where there's the explosion and he's knocked unconscious for a second, and the first thing he says when he wakes up is, "Are you all right?" And she looks at him like he's a lunatic.
Now,
and says,
do
"Yeah,
you know what you're...
I'm the unconscious. I'm the conscious one in this conversation."
Do you know what... I don't know how to... I'm trying to phrase this question in the best possible way. Do you know what they're referencing, and do you know that you know that reference and have pointed it out before when we did that movie?
I don't know. Another movie we did?
Casino Royale.
Oh, okay.
When he wakes up and when he's revived from his...
Right.
They say the same thing. So they stole it from there. I mean, it's good. It's a good bit.
Yeah, that's true.
But it's exactly the same, down to the same line.
Yeah, you're right.
Again, that...
But I liked it in that movie, and I like it in this movie.
My ideas.
Yeah.
Join the queue!
Yeah.
But and two other things about this scene. Well, more than that, but for now. Poe's jacket. What is it about this series' black characters wearing the clothes of white guys who are presumed dead? As we all saw what Lando did at the end of Empire Strikes Back, where he started wearing Han Solo's clothes, and then the same thing's happening. What is this saying about black people? I don't think it's good. They can define their own style, right? I think they're not just like, well, this was hanging up in the wardrobe, right, so now I wear this.
But well, by the third movie in this trilogy, I also thought to myself, is it only black people that will refuse to be stormtroopers? Are they the only ones with this power? Are white people easily duped?
Yeah, I guess it's we'll get there, but I think maybe it's a thoughtless reference to the kind of African independent nation child soldier idea.
Mm-hmm.
That this is that it is generally people of color in African nations who end up getting drafted into these
Yeah.
child soldier networks, but unthinkingly, it's a little bit racist in there. Anyway, and this is where all the stuff with BB-8, his his emotional reactions seem much stronger than the human part.
Yeah, it's really good.
But I mean, the series has form on that, doesn't it? Like Yoda, the puppet in Star Wars Strikes Back, the puppet outperforms the people, and we're doing the same again here, really. So that's fine.
He's
fine.
catching Finn in lies.
It's so good, that little back.
Yeah.
That little he rolls back a little bit when Finn says he's with the Resistance.
And when he looks from one character to the other when he catches them in a lie, it's always really good.
It's like because he's partly based on Wally, I think, who is partly based on Short Circuit. So there's a lineage.
Yeah, right.
Because it made me think of Wally and the spork. You know, where he finds a spork and he doesn't know whether to put it in the fork or the spoon, and he goes back and forth between them.
All right, well, they're going to be chased around until they find the Millennium Falcon.
Yeah. Fandom as dramatic irony. Because you don't know that that's the piece of junk they're talking about.
Yeah, right. Not until their ship's blown up.
Until you see it, and this is a moment. I mean, this is the literal definition of fan service: is when what is happening in the fictional world ceases to matter, and it becomes entirely about the audience and what they want. Because I really don't think they should have put the music sting in. Because I kind of like... I would have preferred it if they got on the Falcon without us as an audience knowing that they were on the Falcon until we were actually in there.
So no establishing shot.
The cockpit was the reveal or something, or...
Yeah.
Or, I don't know, you thought that they were being chased by the Falcon. And I think that obviously the way that this is done is to excrete the fan service out of it as much as possible. But
sure.
I think at the expense of what's happening in the fictional world, like the stakes of this particular escape. Because I like this. The ship hasn't flown in years. Why is everything stopped in the last 30 years? Why wouldn't the Falcon... I mean, it's also way too old to be functional, but that's a different matter.
You don't know how those spaceships work.
Well, I know how time works in every other movie we've seen. It doesn't work the same in this one. But on the plus side, the Falcon looks as good as it ever did, and as it never did.
Yeah, right.
So it's like it looks as good as it did originally, and better than it did when the special editions got through with it. So it's win-win on how the Falcon looks. I'll give the spinning shot of the Falcon a pass because it's aerodynamically consonant with the movement of the Falcon. I would prefer a similar shot, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
You don't have to gild the lily in the way you do, but I'll let it pass because it's connected to how the Falcon moves as an object.
Now, pro or con on this battle, on this chase?
I think pro it. I think it looks great. It's very exciting.
I'm glad to hear you say that.
Probably the best looking space battle in Star Wars for a while.
Yeah, I think it's one of the... There's something kinetic within the chase that I think J.J. Abrams does well.
I agree.
And the ship itself seems to be taking up physical space in a real world better than it ever has before. And I think that's...
Or for a long time.
Yeah, I think that's what...
I think it does in the original trilogy. I think that
yes, I mean, like,
trilogy,
obviously...
But not for the prequels.
No, yeah, right. Obviously, the original trilogy looks great, especially when you consider the time they're made in. But you have a...
I think even outside of that, I still think it's a high point. Anyway.
Yeah, I mean, they look amazing, but you also have a sense that you're looking at models. I think.
Okay.
But they're great.
I don't think we can. I don't think
models.
we can deep dive on this.
No.
I don't know if I agree with that though.
That's fine.
I think they found the unity of space in that movie, that in those movies, that was kind of unparalleled. But
I guess you know what, you might be right. What I'm thinking more, I think what I'm thinking of more
digital is as good
with these movies is the speed at which they're moving too. It feels more visceral. It was harder to do in those earlier movies because of actual big models moving around. But when you can do some of that digitally, you really get a sense of the danger of what's happening to to Rey and Finn being chased by these TIE fighters.
Yeah.
And one thing that's I think later Star Wars properties have done that is really good is there's a menace to TIE fighters that...
They are new TIE fighters.
Yeah.
I'll give you that. However, I don't know why they haven't replaced the 80s arcade screens inside, but... well, I know why. Nostalgia. But...
Yeah.
They worked on the outs. They at least changed the outside.
Yeah.
They just were like, no, we're good with the Pac-Man look.
But they look, you know, they feel genuinely menacing and dangerous.
I don't know about that. I like the sequence. I think it's a really good space. Well, it's not a space. That's the other thing about it, is it's an air battle.
Yeah. Which,
aside from the pod race, we've never really seen before.
True.
Which is not a battle. I mean, it is a very low stakes battle, but this is high. This is somewhat higher stakes than
yeah.
I think, you know, the problem is, again, there should have been an entirely wordless sequence. Like, there should have been like the speeder chase.
Mm-hmm.
I guess they do speak a little bit. Speeder chase, but when the action starts, it's kind of like Ben Burt just takes over.
Yeah, I mean, there's a little bit of I see them and I know and that kind of shit.
So much.
No, I mean in Jedi then, even.
Oh yeah,
Luke and Leia are talking to each other but
then there's that moment where you can just close your eyes and tell what's happening.
Yeah.
Through the sound design, and I wanted something like that on the soundscape, and some explanation as to why Rey can fly the Falcon. I mean, that's a problem, and that's the Mary Sue of it all.
Right. It doesn't
Finn,
help
and
that
Finn doesn't know what he's doing either.
Yeah.
It's like, why am I watching these fucking amateurs messing about in the Star Wars?
It doesn't help that they both say, "I can do this. I can do this."
Well, that's it, exactly. Like Chekhov in Star Trek, and like Kirk in Star Trek.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, I'm going to promote this amateur to captain? It feels like the same here. It's like, they're flying the Falcon. Neither of them, you know, a man who can't shoot, a woman who can't fly. Nothing. It's just like, it's all happenstance.
Yeah. Yeah, you know, and...
Until it's not. Until it was the Force bringing them together, and...
there's that idea too, but it kind of, again, it harkens back to how much coincidence is coincidence. If you even have a moment when she's talking to Simon Pegg and maybe he tries to convince her to pod race or something, and she says, "I'm done with that," and he's like, "Why would such a great pilot quit?" You know, that kind of thing, and just to let the audience know that she. You know, that she has skills.
And in the original Star Wars, as Star Wars the film, not the trilogy, not the original trilogy, but the original film. There are a number of near coincidences in that movie, but if ever you stop to think about them and you headcanon it, you can figure it out.
Yeah.
So like sort of like, oh, why would they land on Tatooine? That's where they were going. They know Obi-Wan's there.
Yeah.
So it's not a coincidence. You can never do that here. You're just like the best headcanoning you can do is what you just did, or like she's touched so many space breaks over the
She just gets how they work.
But, yeah, I mean, even the kid in the last Indiana Jones movie, at least they have a scene of him with his, cockpit made out of bottles.
Yeah,
and
right.
glasses and
Yeah,
corks
he's
or whatever the
practicing
fuck
in a
it is.
bar.
Like, even that's better than this,
Yeah.
where they don't address it except to go, force.
Mm-hmm.
One with the force.
Just with the force.
It's like Luke was strong in the force, but he couldn't defeat the floating onion.
Yeah, right.
Anyway. He had to be taught that lesson.
Mm-hmm. Oddly, though, at the end of this entire thing, I kind of like the moment where they come together and they're talking over each other, surprised that they did what they did.
Gee, I'm as surprised as they are.
Yeah.
Oh, and then we get into the classic bad writing scenario of something happens before he can come clean.
Yeah, right.
He's about to come clean with her, and then, I don't know, presumably they get the tractor beam.
They get
from
boarded by Han Solo. Now talk about coincidence.
Han Solo is traveling around,
just happening by
deep space, in a sort of moving Deep Space Nine.
Yeah.
And it's sort of like, it's just shortcut after shortcut.
Yeah. But you've spoken to it before. It's one of those things where the fan service is so heavy because he's going to come running in with Chewie, and the audience is going to cheer because it's Han Solo and Chewie, and you're gonna forget that this is awfully convenient that he just happens by.
Yeah, this is not another near coincidence.
And so it's a real polish on a turd. It's really easy. It's easy to forget that there are big missteps in this movie.
That's what. Yeah, it's good. And I think I would really wish the trailer hadn't contained this moment.
Yeah, me too.
I know that they're probably thinking, well, we don't have Luke in here, we don't have at least one shot of Han Solo.
Right.
Then
there'll be a riot.
But they could have picked literally any other shot.
Yeah.
They could have even used the footage of someone closing a door on his foot. That would have been hilarious.
Right.
But so because it's a genuinely affecting moment.
Mm-hmm.
And it's written and played perfectly. Like, I have no notes for this other than that they shouldn't have put it in the trailer.
Yeah.
Because they just walk onto the Falcon and go, we're home.
Mm-hmm.
Chewie, we're home.
Yeah.
It's great.
No notes
they don't
on that.
overdo it.
Yeah.
No notes on that.
Just
but
don't put it in your trailer.
If that had been as a surprise moment in the movie, it would have just
been wonderful.
It would have landed so much better.
Yeah.
And in between the introduction of Han and the end of the battle, we've got a lightsaber tantrum from Kylo Ren.
That's my exact note.
One of those.
My note is Kylo Ren has a temper tantrum, and it's all just for the anything else joke at the end.
I laughed. I thought that was funny because he's so good at playing a spoilt brat.
Yeah.
The problem is, that's not good for the film.
No, yeah.
It's also a crappy lightsaber.
It's a really crappy lightsaber. Yeah.
I mean, what is the purpose of those two lit ends aside from accidentally impaling yourself?
Right. Like accidentally burning your hand.
But how would that give you advantage in battle? That's what I don't understand as well.
Well, he was able to burn Finn's jacket later in this movie.
Okay, but if you don't want to brand your enemy, what do you...
I don't know.
What are you getting out of it?
But it's weird that they try to put so much character into the sword. Like, he's diabolical, but unsteady within that, and so is his sword, with the jitteriness of
that might be headcanon. I think it comes down to toys in the end. When it comes to lightsabers, a new lightsaber means a new toy. I think it's that simple.
Might be.
I don't know if it's meant to represent his character. I never got that from it.
Well, I think I remember hearing things in maybe a commentary about the sword itself, and that was part of the reason. I think that's why I'm saying that.
It's like Gwendolyn Christie, you know, it's like the Silver Surfer trooper.
Mm-hmm.
It's like that is so we can sell a different stormtrooper toy.
I remember thinking, even the first time I saw this, you know, obviously you're doing a Darth Vader surrogate. This is going to be the guy we're supposed to hate for 3 movies. At the very least, they get it right and not chop him in half like they do in The Phantom Menace. But I also...
I refuse to concede that was a mistake.
But I
I
also...
want it on the record. I do not agree to that.
I know you don't, but you're supposed to hate a villain over the course of the trilogy. And what a great villain.
Oh, Maul?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I don't disagree with that. But Kylo Ren, the problem is that they're playing their redemption hand too early.
Exactly right.
Because, you know, later, I don't know, at some point in this movie, Rey will say, I can tell you're drawn to the light. There's obviously the Han Solo moment, which he, to be fair, he backs away from, and that provides a nice little, literal turn of the knife. But that is baked in too early, I think.
But think about how you're introduced to Darth Vader. He walks into that pristine white ship. He's
just a henchman.
Picking people up, choking, like not force choking people yet, but actually choking, and then throwing them against walls.
Oh, well, he's force choke. Well, yeah, that's true. Where he's introduced, he does force choke people.
Yeah,
it's the second movie where he telecommute. Force chokes.
But there's such menace and dread built within that, and I feel like that's what you want in a character, and especially if you're gonna try to do a redemption arc for the second time in another trilogy. You know, he has to start off menacing, and when you make him a bratty boy, you take away, you know, everything that's supposed to be good about a villain, I think.
But it's also, you know, it's girls Adam Driver.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
He perfected playing this character before.
Yeah, true.
And this is the character they want him to play again, so you get satisfaction from it in the moment. You just know it's going to harm the movie overall.
Mm-hmm.
There's no one better to do this version of the character that they want. The problem is that they created this version of the character.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk Han Solo then.
Yeah.
And Chewie, for that matter. Pre-New Hope version... version -1 of Han Solo.
Yeah.
He's kind of between the end of Solo and the beginning of New Hope, mentally.
He's regressed.
It's it's so obvious that it's supposed to be a reset Han Solo. That they've engineered everything to give us the Han Solo that we first saw in New Hope, to the point where things like age and life events all have to kind of capsize in front of him in order to make this happen.
Mm-hmm.
He has to have lost everything in order to be here.
And he has. I mean...
Yeah. And they go to lengths to explain it later on in the movie, that he's playing the role of a smuggler as a way of dealing with the trauma of his son becoming a neo-fascist.
Right.
A lot of leaps there.
Yes.
And Rey's fangirling all over him.
Big time. Is this the part also where she says that she thought Luke Skywalker was a myth?
We're getting there. It's close.
Okay.
Yeah, no, we're right in there. I think this is a good use of Harrison Ford and Han Solo, even though it is somewhat out of character.
Well, like you said, they're just trying to reset him, but yeah, it feels vintage Han, and there are moments within it I like. I like when he says, "I'll do what I always do. I talk on my way out of it." And Chewie...
You see, I don't like that line because I think that's an Indiana Jones line. I don't think that's a Han Solo line.
Well.
I don't think Han Solo knows that much about himself. I think Indiana Jones does.
But he's an older man. Maybe he's learned something about himself and who he is.
Well, everything else tells us he hasn't learned a thing.
True.
He's like Larry David in the finale of Curb Your Enthusiasm.
I've
never learned a lesson
a single
in
lesson.
70 years. The best moment in TV ever. I haven't learned one lesson. Fuck you, Elmo.
It's the yes I do every time that makes me laugh, because that speaks to his kind of arrogance that's always been with him. I like that moment.
Yeah, so there's some sort of misuse of him, like, correcting people's Star Wars quotes.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, really? He's just a trivia game nerd. The thing, I want to say, like, I don't know if there's a strong objection to this. I haven't heard it, if there is. But I do want to just say, for everyone who has come out against the Tarzan yell and the 20 minutes of Wookiee talk in the Christmas special, why did Chewie get away with, I don't know? I mean, that's pure Scooby-Doo. And it feels like they got a pass for that. And yeah, people go, oh, he yells like Tarzan. And, you know, the first 20 minutes of the Christmas special is just Wookiees talking. And like, yeah, and he goes, oh, in The Force Awakens. Ruby Rex. I mean, it's terrible. I'm not, I love it. I love that level of camp because I like the Christmas special and I Return of the Jedi's fine. Good movie. But I just feel like if you don't like these things, why is this version of the same thing getting a pass?
So is it? I don't know that it is. It is? People are saying they love it?
No, people are saying, I don't think anyone said that they love it, but I mean, I get that Chewie's pretty well handled, I think, as a character.
Sure.
In this trilogy. Compared in relative terms. I can imagine how badly it could have gone with Chewie, and they pretty much stay away from anything that would cause offense.
Mm-hmm.
Chewie's just Chewie.
Yeah.
They don't make it, apart from, I don't know, they don't like do anything that would make you think that's not Chewie or this is, you know.
Now, are both actors playing Chewie in this movie?
Only in this one, I think.
Right.
Yeah. At this point, because Peter Mayhew couldn't do it
Yeah.
after this one. So I think it's sometimes him and it's sometimes the Scandinavian fellow.
Yeah.
What's his name?
I don't remember his name, but
I mean, I don't know. It's seamless. I don't.
No, I agree.
I think they did the right.
But Chewie
right
himself looks a little younger to me than he does even in the other.
He's definitely got a better hair care routine going on than he had previously.
All right.
Yeah, it's interesting because you can take again, like, I don't want to be bringing up Star Trek, but they made a big, like, you know, he's one of those sci-fi characters like Spock or the Klingons who they've decided, in order to tell the stories that they want to tell, live a very long time.
Yeah.
Like 3 or 4 times humans do. And and because of, well, Yoda too, I guess, is another one.
Mm-hmm.
Another example. But in Star Trek, they always make a mistake because they kind of grey up Spock to show that he's getting older. It's like, if he lives this long, he wouldn't be grey yet.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
This is like him getting grey at 20.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then the Klingons, when Worf comes back in Picard season 3, he's got this, like, bright white mane, and it's like, he's not that old for a Klingon.
Yeah.
And it was like, the last time we saw him was 10 years ago, okay? He's not. So I kind of like that they've just gone, Chewie's going to look like Chewie until the day they finally decide.
I don't have a problem of Chewie looking like
off.
Chewie, but I did have a problem that he actually looks a little younger as opposed to just what he used to look like.
And that's probably because a more physically able man is inside him.
Maybe.
Certainly for the next movie.
Need a new book to read? Then get ready for Lizard vs. Wizard and read The Last of the Giant Fire Lizards. What is it? A brand new action-packed comedy fantasy adventure book written and performed by Christopher John Featheroff. You can find it on ebook, paperback, and audiobook on pre-sale right now on Amazon. It's also on Kindle Unlimited, so you can read it for free if you subscribe. What is it about? Well, when her nest is destroyed and her forever mate slaughtered, Zephyr Ignitus, the last of an ancient breed of fire-breathing dragons, gathers together a team of saber-toothed panthers, woolly mammoths, and a crew of howler monkeys brandishing swords and weapons stolen from the ship's